Good morning. It's Wednesday, July 30th, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 35, and my name is Chris. And it's a big show today. A lot going on in Android world, in the Gnome world, in all parts of the world, actually. And to help me sort through something that is the size of the world, I have been joined by an elite team of internet experts right on the Mumble line. Good morning, time-appropriate greetings, Mumble citizens.
Good morning. Time-appropriate greeting to you.
I think this is my new favorite part of the show where we do that because I never know what I'm going to get, and I love it. Okay, let's start with a story that broke yesterday afternoon that sounds pretty bad, and it's for anybody who uses Android. Oh, you use Android? Well, you're okay as long as you have a device that is 4.4 or later. If you don't, maybe you need to pay attention. So it's being called the fake ID vulnerability, and depending on who you go read, it is all kinds of bad to not so bad. Here's the details. It stems from a failure of Android's OS to verify the validity of a cryptographic certificate that accompanies each application when it's installed on the device. Yeah, this is pretty major. I think just right there, that sums it up. The OS relies on credentials when allocating special privileges that allow just a handful of applications to bypass Android sandboxing. Under normal condition, the sandbox prevents programs from accessing data belonging to other apps or sensitive parts of the OS, like a sandbox is supposed to. Select apps, however, are permitted to break out of the sandbox. Okay, full stop right there. Not a great idea. Just from a security design standpoint, there's issues with that. Moving on, though. Here's really where it gets bad. Out of all of the applications that are allowed to break out of the sandbox, one of them, right out of the factory, Adobe Flash. Adobe Flash, in all versions but 4.4 of Android, for instance, is permitted to act as a plugin for any other app installed on the phone, presumably to allow those apps, to have like Flash animations or something in them. Another example would be Google Wallet because it has access to the NFC chip, or other applications that have direct access to hardware. So all an app would have to do, here's the beauty of it, is simply claim it is Adobe Flash. And because the Android OS is not verifying the certificate, it just allows it into any other application right through the sandbox.
Isn't that exactly why they got rid of Adobe Flash being pre-installed, since it was a security risk?
Yeah, right? Flash is just horrible. Here's the gotcha, too. The flaw appears to have been introduced to Android through an open source component called Apache Harmony. Google turned to Harmony as an alternative means of supporting Java in the absence of a deal with Oracle to license Java directly. However, here's the gotcha. Work on Harmony was discontinued in November of 2011. However, Google has continued using native Android libraries that are based on Harmony code. The vulnerability concerning the certificate validation in the package installer module persisted even as the two code bases have diverged.
I'm shaking my head.
Now, it's not quite all doom and gloom. Now, you can imagine there are some amazing headlines for this. Like here, I think, not too surprisingly, the Apple camp had maybe my favorite. Here was Apple Insider, and I saw a lot of, after Apple Insider did this, I saw a lot of other websites go with this headline. New Android fake ID flaw empowers stealthy new class of super malware. Look at that headline, right?
Oh, wow, how sensationalist can you get?
I know, it's pretty great. That's what I love when this kind of stuff happens. Talk about scaring up the public into just like the arms of cyber legislation. So Google responded. Ours originally ran this story. This was Google's response to ours. So, okay, we've heard the details, but here's why it's actually, in practice, maybe not super bad. Even though it goes back to like Android 2.2, this flaw. But here's why it might not be super bad. After reviewing the word of this vulnerability, Google quickly issued a patch that was distributed to the Android partners as well as to ASOP, the open source Google project, Android project. And Google Play Verify apps have also been enhanced to protect users from this issue. At this time, Google has scanned all applications submitted to Google Play, as well as applications reviewed outside of Google Play, and we have seen no evidence, according to Google, of an attempted exploitation of this vulnerability. So if you only are using the Play Store, Google is now actively scanning for applications that attempt to present themselves as other applications. Apparently a fairly straightforward thing to detect. However, if you're getting apps outside the Play Store, like so many other Android stories we cover, there is additional risk there. And it's interesting how, so obviously the real problem here is a lot of these older phones are not going to get patched. Anything after 4.4 is vulnerable to this.
Before 4.4.
Right, yes, sorry, yes. And so you have to, right? No, yeah, good job, man. So you have to take into consideration that what they're really doing is a bit of a workaround. They're doing it at an API level. They're trying to catch stuff and preventing it, but in practice, it does seem to offer some protection. Here's the reality of the situation: because this has been patched, it's been sent out to their OEM partners. Those phones that are getting updates will probably receive a patch soon. So in the meantime, you've got the Play services that are essentially protecting you, and you're pretty much safe if you're buying from the Play Store. Now, could somebody figure out a way around this scan? Probably, right? I mean, let's be honest, there could probably be another vulnerability they could bypass or something like that. But if you've got more recent Play services, at least you have that level of protection. So that's good. And Android devices 2.3 and up have Play services. So there's really only one version of Android, 2.2, that will remain vulnerable with no mitigation steps. But there's probably not a lot of people on 2.2. You can Google the stats. Google publicly lists them.
Yeah, you got 2.3 even on the old Kindle Fires. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is going to affect the Kindle Fires as well. So it will Amazon patch. And remember, now here's the other thing. Those Kindle Fires are not using Play API. A lot of these Chinese manufacturer phones are not using the Play APIs. Anything that doesn't have the Google Play Store on it doesn't have the Play APIs and the Play services. And without those two things, you don't have any protection.
Well, I'm also thinking about, carriers that don't update, or not carriers, but manufacturers that don't update phones remotely.
Sure.
And, if they don't push out that update, then that person's vulnerable, and that's millions of phones.
What do you guys think about a Sandbox that specifically has a backdoor in it, not like in the traditional sense, but like here, oh, you want out of the Sandbox? Yeah, just show me your ID card. I won't even verify it, and then I'll let you out of the Sandbox. What the hell kind of a Sandbox is that?
That's not a Sandbox.
That's not how Sandboxes work.
Shouldn't the way you get out of a Sandbox is through a sanctioned API that is controlled by the operating system?
I mean, essentially, but also at the same time, how can Google enforce that throughout all of the programs that people put out via the Play Store and not the Play Store?
Well, Android itself is based on, the way the applications are now, they're sandboxed out of the gate. You don't have to do anything as an app developer. You don't have a choice. And it's unless you are Flash that you are allowed out of that sandbox. Everything is sandboxed by default. So I guess what my point is not to make this an iOS versus Android thing, but I think we once again are seeing a reason why they just sit on the iOS platform. We're not even going to bother with Flash. It's too much trouble. There's too many security compromises we have to take to make Flash work on iOS. And even though there was rumors that they had working demos of Flash on iOS that Adobe was showing at conferences, you could see why, if you need to have something that can break out of a sandbox, you could see from a security standpoint, that's just right there. It seems like a no-go. I don't know. I would like to hear people's comments on that. JupiterBroadcasting.com/contact or techtalktoday.reddit.com. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the way this works. Also, props to Blue Box Security. They're the folks that found this, and they have a great write-up that I have them linked in the show notes as well. I also have linked some of those great headlines if you want to just go read some of those and smile.
They also have an app to check for the vulnerability.
Oh, good. So like an app that scans other apps?
It's an app that scans for the bugs.
Good. Yeah. I still don't, I don't know. People have emailed in and asked, should I get antivirus for my Android phone? I just don't think that's a good idea. I think just stick to the Play Store and you're pretty much safe for the most part.
Like my LG phone, the one I had before my Nexus 5, did have a program on it that was preloaded called Lookout.
Yeah,
and
Lookout, yeah. I've used that.
And that's not really a virus scanner. It just checks to make sure that what you've got isn't going to interfere with the rest of your system and whatnot. It, probably does a little bit of security check, sure, but I don't think it's an antivirus per se.
No, and if you think about it, what Lookout does is what the Play services do. When you run an application, the Play services in the background check it against Google's known database. So they're looking at every app you run, but they're doing it to compare it against a known bad list. That includes, by the way, side-loaded applications, not just the Play. The Play services look at all applications on an Android phone, not just applications installed from the Play Store. Now, Bubba in the chat room says he's going to see the DEF CON talk from the group that found this, the Blue Box Security guys. Bubba, do report back, and don't forget, you can always join us in the Mumble Room. I'd love to get some folks who go to DEF CON to get their take here on Tech Talk Today, because I'll be trying to follow it for the news, but we won't have anybody on the ground. So if you want to be our on-the-ground reporter, Bubba, email me today at jupiterbroadcasting.com and join us in the Mumble Room. Let's talk about something that's pretty close to my heart. You guys heard about this podcast patent troll that's going after Adam Carolla and how stuff works? You heard about this story?
I haven't. But
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, so, okay, here's the gist. Okay, so I wasn't, okay. I thought, okay, so maybe I just knew about this because this is my industry, so I've been following it. So there is a company called Personal Audio that's been going after a certain set of podcasters claiming that they have patented episodic content distributed over the web. And that's what's got everybody freaked out. The EFF is doing a lawsuit. Adam Carolla on the Ace Broadcasting Network has been soliciting donations. He's gotten up to $450,000 donated from his audience. And, because they were saying, look, if you're podcasting, you're using our technology. We patented that back in the 90s. Podcasters now pay up. And what they've been saying they're going to do is podcasters large and small go around and get a little royalty from all the podcast networks. Always, of course, if there's any industry that starts to crop up, you've always got your patent trolls. It just seems to be the way it goes. Well, in a very bizarre statement released today, Personal Audio says that Adam Carolla, who's raised more than $450,000, is wasting their money because they say, we're dropping the lawsuit. What? Yeah, they say Adam Carolla's assertions that we would destroy podcasting were ludicrous on their face. And he said it generated sympathy from fans and got them to donate money. According to Personal Audio, they've lost interest in suing podcasts because the podcasters, even the ones Adam Carolla's size, don't make enough money for them to care.
What?
That's hilarious.
Huh?
Under the impression that, so they said, this is from Personal Audio, we were under the impression that Carolla, the self-proclaimed largest podcaster in the world, as well as certain other podcasters, were making a significant amount of money from infringing on Personal Audio's patents. After the parties completed discovery, however, it became clear this was not the case.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's why I was never really too worried about this, because Personal Audio, by the way, has also dropped their lawsuits against How Stuff Works and TogiNet as well. And they're changing gears. They're going after the television networks now. They're actually suing CBS, NBC, and ABC. And here's why I never got too worried. I read the patent. And to me, you can go look it up too if you want. I believe it's U.S. Patent 8112504. It was about an episodic playlist player embedded on a website, not about MP3s in an RSS feed, which everybody kind of was getting all worked up. People were kind of getting, it was sort of becoming a little bit of drive-by activism over this. And I read this and I thought, they're suing over the wrong technology. And I think that's actually what happened, is they went through the discovery process and realized that these guys are not infringing. They're not doing a web-embedded MP3 playlist player. And they essentially are now trying to save face. Plus now what Adam Carolla has said is, screw these guys. He says, we're going to continue to pursue counterclaims against Personal Audio, seeking to invalidate the patent so that Personal Audio cannot sue other podcasters for infringement of the patent. He said, I've already incurred hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees and expenses to defend myself. And I think what happened is, these dumbasses realize that we're going after the wrong group. First of all, they don't have a lot of money. Second of all, they're not technically infringing on our patent, and they're a particularly technically inclined group of people, so they're going to trounce us on that. However, CBS, NBC, and ABC do have a ton of money, and they have a ton of web players on their websites that play through episodic content. And so they're going to go after these guys. And a lot of companies have already folded. They've gone after Apple. They sued Apple for episodic content distributed through iTunes, and iTunes just bought a huge-ass licensing fee from them and just sort of rolled over. They actually took it to court, and Apple lost. And so they had to roll over and pay them.
This is actually interesting. At first I was thinking Carolla's barking up the wrong tree, but at the same time, they kind of trolled him. Now he's just going to troll them back for, costing him a ton of money.
I think the same group went after Newegg, too. So just a bunch of real jerks.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're just money, 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 we want all the things.
Yeah, it's one of these things where they did invent some technology in the 90s. The company collapsed. What remained was the intellectual property. That's really what this patent war is all about, right? Is these things become property in a sense. And then so here we are, move it a decade forward, and now we're using that old intellectual property from the carcass of this old tech company to go after a new industry.
It's zombified litigation.
Exactly. All right, before we run, this week has been Guadic. That's the Gnome Developers Conference. Today was day 4, and there was some interesting goodies. I'm still digesting all of this. We'll have a full roundup in the Linux Action Show. But the 4th day of Guadic was devoted to hardware and its interaction with the desktop. The first talk was Hardware Integration, the Gnome Way, by Bastian Garcia, who has been a contributor to Gnome and Fedora for many years. Then they talked a little bit about performance testing on actual hardware, and this resonated with me. Owen Taylor talked about continuous integration performance on testing on actual hardware. According to Owen, continuous performance testing is very important. It helps find performance regressions more easily because the delta between the code tested last time and the code tested now is much smaller. Thus, there are much fewer commits to have to go back and investigate. He noted, and this is the part that resonated, that desktop performance testing in a VM is not very useful, which is why he has several physical machines connected to a controller which download new builds of GNOME continuous and installs them on the connected machines. The testing can be controlled by GNOME hardware testing app Owen has created, and it gets posted online. Here's what they test for continuously now in GNOME when they're developing, all the time. Time to boot to desktop, time to redraw the entire empty desktop, time to show overview, time to redraw overview with 5 windows, time to show the application picker, and time to draw the frame from test application, and time to start gedit. They do all this continuously as they're developing GNOME, as even just a few commits go in. Tests are scripted right in the shell using JavaScript, and events are logged with timestamps. The results are uploaded to perf.gnome.org. In the future, he'd like to have results graphed and linked to particular commits so you could click on it and see which commit caused a change. And they're going to have more machines with various kinds of architectures, like laptops, ARM devices, etc., doing the testing. Other really good news, moving right along, Builder was announced, a new IDE for GNOME. And this, if you listen to Coda Radio, has been a huge sore spot for Mr. Dominic. The last talk of the day was Builder, a new IDE for GNOME by Christian Herget. Christian started the talk by clearly stating that Builder is not intended to be a generic IDE. He says for those, you could use Eclipse or monodevelop. Instead, and by the way, some people won't like this, he thinks, will not support plugins. It'll be IDE specially focused on GNOME development. It's going to have It's going to have a lot of basic features that are good for the GNOME desktop. I have those listed in the show notes if you're curious about this. Things like snippet support, auto formatting, distraction-free mode. They're actually going to still have people use Glade for the UI. Source editor uses GTK source view. Components are broken into services, and services are contained in subprocesses. There's a lot of interesting stuff that I have in the show notes. So pretty productive Guadic, it looks like. Some interesting changes coming to GNOME. They're also working on new animations in the GNOME shell that they have borrowed, quote-unquote, from Elementary OS and stuff like that. So we'll have more of a roundup in the Linux Action Show on Sunday. But you can go read. There's a great post that I haven't read all of yet, but I got the highlights for you guys, and I have it linked in the show nizzles if you'd like to read that.
Can't wait to hear what Michael might say about this.
Yeah. Go GNOME, right? Go GNOME.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. GNOME and Fedora are really doing a lot in the desktop space, the desktop environment space, as far as that goes. And so this is something we've been discussing also.
Hey, you know me, I'm an advocate of all of you going out and getting a read it later type service. You've got Pocket. My personal favorite is Instapaper, just because I've used it for a long time. There's all kinds of read it later services, but I think it's a great way for you to find something throughout the week that you know you'd like to spend some time on when you have more attention. Maybe it's a lazy Sunday evening or something like that. So from time to time now, I'm going to recommend stuff for your read it later queue. And this week, my read it later pick is the NVIDIA Shield tablet review. We teased this last week that it would probably be announced, and the review you need to read, the AnandTech review. These are always like the benchmark review. AnandTech does such a great job. Lots of good testing in this thing, and the Shield tablet looks kind of compelling to me. It looks like it's extremely, extremely well built. It's very well spec'd. This, to me, looks like the most compelling Android tablet now in the market that has the capability of also playing really great video games. So AnandTech has a big write-up, lots of pages. You can go check it out. I'll have a link in the show notes. Add that to your Read It Later queue. And if you've got here's another thing. If you've got a good Read It Later tool, like Instapaper, and you have one of these articles that's like 7 pages deep, or in this case, I think it's like 5 pages. It just goes and grabs all the pages for you and puts it in one continuous page in your reader, so you don't have to page through it. It's really nice. So go find a link to that. And last but not least, Magnetium wrote in with a little bit of feedback to yesterday's Tech Talk Today. More information on the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Australian piracy story we talked about yesterday. So our avid Australian listener, Magnetium, wrote in. He says, "Hey guys at Jupiter Broadcasting, I just want to put a bit more info after I saw yesterday's Tech Talk Today about the Copyright Act that's being brought to Australia. Someone mentioned that, well, Netflix could come in and make some serious money. Well, Netflix would be awesome if our internet infrastructure wasn't maximum of 12 megabit speed if you are lucky. On a good day, and I've got some of the best net here, I can get around 8 megabits down. Netflix wouldn't be viable because it wouldn't be available to even 30% of the country. We have Foxtel, which is premium paid TV, and it costs a fortune, which is also not very viable. In regards to copywriting, the government also has it all wrong. The number one reason that I'm always told people I know as to why they pirate TV shows, movies, and games is that the pricing of the stuff over here is unbelievable. For an instance, the box set of Star Trek The Next Generation will cost you over $250 if you convert the cost depending on its special discount or not. I know, right? And I thought 100 was bad. Either way, you guys were spot on. Keep up the great work. Love the show. And big shout out from Australia. Crikey! We don't actually say that, so don't get fooled by the stereotype, he says. And I don't have a pet kangaroo. At least not anymore. Not anymore, he says. I want a kangaroo. God, my son would love that. Could you imagine having a kangaroo?
There was one of those that got loose in the Spokane area a couple of years ago.
A kangaroo?
A kangaroo wallaby mix, actually.
Well,
a wallaroo.
There you go. TechTalkToday.reddit.com. That's where you can go get your story into the show. Let me know what you want to see covered. Give me an idea. I source from all over the web for everyday show, and I always check that subreddit every morning to kind of, you guys set my compass in the direction I should go, and sometimes I just whole cloth steal from there, and sometimes I just kind of get inspired from there. I look for feedback in there too. TechTalkToday.reddit.com. That's how you can help shape the stories that we cover. If you can't join us live, you can also still participate in the content of the show by engaging there. You can also go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/today to send me an email, give me your thoughts on the show, and last but not least, we could use your help over at patreon.com/today. This is where we are investing in the future of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. We're making changes, and we need your support because we're trying to grow and really expand what we do. And also something I'm considering doing in the semi-near future, and I'll probably restructure the pledge levels. If you go over to patreon.com/today, you can see you can pledge a dollar amount per month. I have suggested $3, but whatever you can afford, more or less is fine. And down here we have different automatic pledge levels that kind of give you an idea of what your contribution is going towards. I'm looking at these top 2 pledge levels, and I'm thinking I'm going to structure these in a sense to essentially have an advisory council when Jupiter Broadcasting is getting close to maybe the release or production of a new show, or we want to make maybe some changes like end a show. And in some cases, I'll just make that decision unilaterally, like a good benevolent dictator does. And in some cases, I like to seek input from a trusted group of advisors, and I want to incorporate some of the top pledge levels into that as sort of a round table, a sounding board of what we're thinking about doing to get your feedback. Because I believe if you're in at these pledge levels, you truly are an investor. You're a producer of the Jupiter Broadcasting Network, and you should have a say in our future. So nothing official yet. I'm going to formalize my thoughts on this, and then I'll restructure those pledge levels a little bit to sort of better reflect that. I'm going to think about it for a little bit, and it's one of these things that, it might be a couple of items a year. It might be a few items. I don't know yet, but it's something I'm thinking about, and it gives you an idea of how important this Patreon page, not just today, but going forward indefinitely. This Patreon page is so important to the network. It gives us so much flexibility and freedom. And the best part is every dollar amount that goes up, the more we report to our audience, the more our audience is the boss. Every dollar amount that goes up, the more we are dependent on that financing to you, which is exactly how a network like this should be structured. Patreon.com/today. And thank you to all 277 patrons. You guys rock. And I'm thinking next Thursday, I shouldn't say this because then the news is going to go crazy. But we're going to do the barbecue challenge. I'm thinking next Thursday, brace yourselves. I will show you, among other things, that Angela and Rikai are trying to get me to make poutine on the barbecue, which I don't really know how that's going to work. But one of the things I do want to do next Thursday is show you how to make the most amazing barbecue chicken. It is so easy. Like if you're busy, it's like crock pot style barbecue chicken. You just get the barbecue going, you put the chicken on there. I'll show you how you can leave it for hours while you go about your day. And at the end of the day, you will never have had better chicken in your entire life. That's what I'm going to do for you next Thursday as part of that barbecue challenge. So join us for that. But don't worry, we're not done yet. We got one more show tomorrow. Join us, jblive.tv, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. You can join our mumble room and hang out in our lug and tell us what you think about the stories. You can join our chat room and help us title the show, or you can email us today at jupiterbroadcasting.com. Don't forget we have RSS feeds. You can subscribe to the show to get it every single day. And last but not least, from time to time, I do ask, if you're an iTunes user, we could use a rating and a comment. That helps juice the iTunes algorithm so that other people can find our show. I know it's a little dirty. I'm sorry, just brush it off. You could put like a gas mask on, you dive in, hold your breath, and get out. And nobody will judge you for it. Nobody. Now, as we get out of here, we do have our IBM theme this week. 2 more days of exclusive IBM breaking technology. And this week, get ready. It's going to make you more productive. You're going to be able to get out there, go to the client, get the job done, maybe even double your workload capacity with this brand new ultra portable IBM computer. See you tomorrow, everybody.
You're looking at a small portable computer called the IBM 5100. It's helping a lot of different people do their work more productively.
Managing real estate investments entails many difficult decisions. Do I pay it now or later? What about the landscaping? Can we afford it? What about taxes? There are many, many difficult decisions to make. It's really nice having a computer to help.
It weighs about 50 pounds. You can plug it in anywhere.
Bad weather, late deliveries, construction delays of all kinds. How is it going to affect our schedule? Now we can find that out fast.
The 5100 can help handle some very complex information.
Jet fuel is expensive. At Simmons Precision, we're developing a product that'll help the pilots save fuel. Flight test time is also expensive. But we do our flight tests right here in the lab on our 5100 and save time and money.
Capacity? About the same as some large computers a few years ago.
We're a mid-sized life insurance company. If we want to compete, and we do, we've got to be flexible. We've got to get answers fast. This little machine will help us do it.
The 5100 is easy to learn and simple to use.
There are countless combinations of feed we can mix. What is the most economical for any particular herd? That's what I'm figuring out now.
The cost of the 5100 is reasonable.
Paper, ink, size, waste, overhead, and don't forget the shipping cost. Estimating a printing job is not so easy. Our estimators handle 50% more work since we got the 5100. We do it faster and a lot more accurately, and our customers really love it.
The IBM 5100. It's bringing the advantages of the computer to more and more people. IBM, helping put information to work for people.